Rina.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we found you here at Sweden Rock, and basically directly after the show. And so, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling very good. This is only the second time that we've performed in Sweden. So that makes it a bit of a surprise always when you enter a stage. Like, do people know us? Do people like us? And we've gotten a great response. And the sun was shining, which is always a good thing on festivals like these. And I think that there was generally a very good atmosphere. So I'm very happy with how we did this festival, and I'm actually hoping that we can return a little bit sooner than the time before.
Yeah, like many know, you have studied classical and jazz singing. So how come that you got into metal music, and what's your influences?
Well, one of the things that I feel I kind of need to clarify with that, because I know that I mean it was on my own bio, but where I come from, which is kind of a rather traditional music institute in my hometown where I grew up. By the way, I never had like formal education. I just went to music school like once a week, like many people. But right there, you had two options when you went for singing classes, and one was classical and the other was called jazz. But actually, in reality, one was classical and the other one was everything that is not classical. So basically, in your jazz lessons, you could do pop songs, rock songs, anything you like. But it's just that back then, the formal categories of singing lessons were only jazz and classical. So what happened is basically I started with those jazz lessons, but I sang anything from Joni Mitchell to Kate Bush. And at one point, I really insisted with my teacher that I got to sing more Kate Bush, because I loved her and I loved, the very high pitched singing.
Yeah.
And we did that for a while, and then she said, I could continue teaching you because I'm really enjoying the lessons, but I think you might be better off with a classical teacher if you really want to go into that kind of soprano singing style. So I took her advice on it, and I had my classical lessons, and I really enjoyed the operas and the arias that I got to sing, and also the kind of the formal education that you get with it as for techniques. But that teacher, she was also like very traditional, and at one point she says, maybe you should look into choirs or something. Maybe you should quit that band of yours and see if you can get into a choir, because they would like, a voice like yours. And that's actually where I felt like, well, we don't have the same goals. It's good to, if you're getting lessons, it's good to kind of have the same idea of where you want to go. And we obviously did not, as I noticed at that moment. So this is when I stopped, and then I didn't have training for a very long time, all the way into the start of Delain's career, until at one point I lost my voice on tour, and I thought, okay, I've got to start taking myself serious again. And now I'm taking like intensive weekend trainings every now and then, because it's hard to go every week because I'm not home every week. So, but every now and then I take like intensive classes, and I'm sorry. And then I try to keep updated on how to keep the voice healthy.
Yeah, last year you released the You in Contradiction album.
Yes.
And with 3 guest vocalists.
Yeah.
How was the creative process for those songs? And what's the idea behind the album and the message in it?
Those are a lot of questions in
one.
Yeah. Well, the basic idea behind the album, we started writing, and we wrote it in a pretty quick time, and it was all very, it was written very instinctively because we had only a short time. And I think that one of the wonderful things we've learned from this album is that if we just take what comes to us in the writing room and work instinctively like that, it works out well, because we've spent more time on several other albums where people have been really excited about this one, and then also about those. But the difference is was really interesting to us to see, and for us it was a real confirmation of our instincts. Like, we don't have to second guess everything. We don't have to go back and forth so much. It's it's good to keep with those original ideas a bit. So that is something about the creative process. As for the themes and the topics and what it speaks about, there is really several topics on the album. But I really noticed when at the point where we were thinking about album titles, and I was looking at the songs and the lyrics and that we had so far, and I just really noticed that the idea that we kind of started with our record before this, with "We Are the Others," the idea of otherness and how it affects people and how we respond to it positively and negatively. That this was kind of still a red thread that runs through the albums. The only thing is that with "We Are the Others," it was very specific about being kind of. So I think I was talking about the lyrical topics that on our previous albums. It was very much specifically about being in some kind of subculture, also broader about being different in general. But it was very much about how human beings and how we respond to that. And I think that with this next record, it's being taken a step further, because it's not only internally within how humans respond to each other, but also how we respond to other species just by the fact that they're another species. For example, Tell Me McInnes is really about speciesism. It's really about the kind of border that we draw between human beings and any other species. The fact that we don't call ourselves an animal, but any other species an animal, it doesn't have to do much with intelligence. It doesn't have to do much with emotions or abilities to feel pain or have social structures or even tool use. I mean, any of the things that 100, 200 years ago we thought were exclusive for humans, scientists have now found out that animals in more or less ways that they have these exactly same processes going on. So Tell Me McInnes is very much about about speciesism and the way that we have a tendency to other not only each other but also other beings around us, and also the whole border between human and non-human is such a vast unbreakable thing. And so it continues on the topic of otherness, but much broader. And The Human Contradiction, the very title, it was taken from one of my favorite science fiction books, and in that book they actually explain kind of the demise of human beings as a result of the human contradiction, which is the fact that we are both hierarchic and intelligence, but that we use our intelligence in order to keep up this hierarchic system where we kind of put everyone higher or lower on this social ladder purely. It's a very socially constructed way of thinking.
Yeah.
And it's not really grounded in anything logical in a way. So this is, and I thought that in the book, of course it's fiction, but it touched upon reality so nicely. And I remember reading just a phrase about the human contradiction, and I thought, I have to remember this one. It's by Octavia E. Butler. She's a fantastic writer. I just feel like I have to mention her whenever I talk about the record, because I shamelessly stole the album title from her book. So so and then we have these phenomenal guest musicians again. We have Marco Hitala, who's been a guest on many of our previous records, actually all except one, and it's always so good to have him back. And the thing is, whenever we write songs now and they have a part in them where we kind of envision a male part, we kind of automatically hear his voice because we've worked with him so many times. And I think it worked really well for this one too. We have the song Sing to Me, which is currently, we made a lyrical video for it, and it's just went online and people are watching it like crazy, so that's really nice. And Elisa White-Gluz is on our album, and this is the first time that we have her join in, and it's really amazing. We've been on tour with Camelot when they had her as a singer with them, and her voice fits the song so well, and also the topic fits her very well. I mean, she's very, very activist in how she profiles herself and how she is, and this is also one of the songs that has a more socially critical theme, I guess. So I'm really happy that it worked out so well on all fronts, and a few months ago we actually got to perform the song with her live for the very first time when we played in Montreal, where she's based. So it was really cool. And the final one is George Osuk, who's performed on our very first record. And we thought it was really cool to have him again because, like I mentioned earlier, we made this record with kind of a more instinctive approach, and we noticed that a lot of elements from our first record kind of came back into what we were writing, like the more dark, like the prominent grunts and the elaborate orchestral themes. And at one point we had this grunt part, and we thought, well, if we are going back to that, then it would be really cool to actually go back to George as well, because he was a part of it when we were doing that back then. And he's got an amazing voice, of course, but we kind of felt that nostalgia, out of nostalgic kind of emotions, it was really cool to have him be on this album again. Yeah.
The band has always written beautiful lyrics, and what inspires you to write the lyrics, and how do you select the titles of the songs?
It's actually always kind of inspired by just what happens around me. And even though I started writing more and more fictional lyrics in a way, it's always based in some kind of emotion or an occurrence, or what can also be is, you know, literature that I'm into at the moment. And like especially when I was still studying, I graduated a year ago, and I really miss it. I miss the inspiration and the food for thought, you know. But when I was studying, like a lot of the authors that I was reading back then, they really influenced me as well. For example, Octavia E. Butler, that's a science fiction book, but it's a science fiction book that I actually had to read for my master in gender studies, because her observations about post-colonialism, about race, about sex were so sharp in that book that they had us read that piece of fiction actually to you know, gain some insight. So it can be anything. When I started out, I noticed that my world was a little bit smaller. I mean, I was 17 years old, I was in puberty, I was, you know, obnoxious. So I noticed that when I was writing lyrics there, it was a lot basically about myself and my own emotions. And of course, these kind of emotions are very universal. So I noticed that a lot of people really like that type of songs that just really talk about your inner world in a way. But that inner world kind of expands as you grow older, because you kind of start to realize how whatever you do or whatever you are, how that works into relation to to the world, actually, to the things that you see on television, to the things how the things that you buy influence an economy, how the things that you say or do, especially when you're giving interviews and when what you say is published, how you cannot complain about the media when in a way everything you do is also the media stuff. So it has always been very personal, and it is still very personal, but I do notice that the older I get, the more it kind of expands. And I guess that's a good thing, and I guess that's a natural thing. I mean, when you're a child, your world revolves around you and you alone, and I guess the older you get, the more you grow. The more you grow and open up, and it makes things more complicated. Yes. Yeah. But hey, life's complicated, so that's okay, I guess.
Yeah. Martin had been a part of Within Temptation prior to Delain. And can you tell us about your first meeting with him?
Sure.
About the Delain project. How did things start?
So what basically happened at one point, I was singing a lot of local projects and bands, and he was actually involved in one of those projects as well. So we didn't know each other back then. I think I was 16 or 17, and he had quit Within Temptation some time ago because he had health issues. He couldn't continue anymore. And in the time that he was feeling better, he used to write music. So this is actually the beginnings of Delain. And at one point, we participated in the same project. So I guess that's where he got to hear my voice for the first time. And they learned that I was doing also lyrics and vocal lines for that project. And where we basically met is I was rehearsing with this one band every Monday night in our local rehearsal space slash bar slash, you know. And he, at one point we came out of the rehearsal space to have a beer, and he was there, and he said, "Hey, I'm Martijn, and I'm working on a project, and this is the music, and it's missing some lyrics, it's missing some vocal lines. Can you see if you can do something with it?" And then we basically just started meeting up. I listened to it, I really liked the music. And yeah, we started meeting up and we started to work on it. Initially, it was not even the idea that I would sing, but it was just the idea that I would write on some songs. But the cooperation went so well that things got out of hand, and here we are. Yeah.
In October this year, you're going to have a few big concerts in UK, and
yes.
then you're going to proceed your tour in Europe and the US till the end of March next year. And what more bands do you know that you're going to share the stage with besides Nightwish?
Well, we're going to play with Nightwish, we're going to play with The Gentle Storm, because they are joining us for our headline dates. And another thing is we are not sure who we are going to share the stage with on our headline tour, because we have initiated a competition where people can actually win a support slot for our UK dates and a support slot for Bloodstock Open Air. And I think it's rather cool, you know, when I think about when I was starting out in bands and you're kind of looking for gigs, and we got so much response from bands that want to join in. I'm really happy for that. So we've got an inbox full of music of very creative people who want to come and play with us. So we have a big job to do and go through all of it, and pick out the ones that we want to play before us. And I think it's really exciting, and I think it's a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to meeting all the people behind the music that we got sent. So yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really excited about it.
Rock and metal have always been dominated by male vocalists.
There we go.
Yeah.
I was waiting for it.
How do you feel as a woman that there are actually a growing number of female-fronted bands today?
I think it's fantastic. I could write a book about this. It's not easy to answer it, you know, within a few minutes. The thing is that it has been very complicated, because if you're a woman in music, you kind of get the cultural cliches that come with being a woman in general. So people will say she's just there because of the looks, or if it's not there from the looks, they will say, "Get the fuck out, you fucking pig." You know. So it's very complicated to do things right when you're a woman, because you will always be compared to the standard, which is men, which is difficult because we are not. And I think that it's really cool that there is a growing number, of course. I don't think it's weird that they were not there before, because if you just consider the historic fact that, you know, only a few decades ago women didn't even get to go to music schools, it just was not allowed, then I don't think it's weird that we got a bit of catching up to do, you know, like men are always very easy to say things like, "Oh, why wasn't Bohemian Rhapsody written by a woman then?" It's like, well, we've only been allowed to learn for a short time, and this is something that, you know, occasionally pisses me off. But the good thing is that, you know, that it has improved so much over such a short time span that it's really cool. And I'm really confident about the future. And of course, there will always be certain challenges, like the fact that you know, especially when it comes to appearance, actually, this is something that is so much focused on, so much more when you're a woman. Like, men are and have been kind of allowed to be, you know, sexual beings on stage. If you're a woman now and you choose to dress in a provocative way, then this is really, it's cheered on and frowned upon in like equal measures. And this is it's kind of sad, because I always feel like being on a stage is a very intense thing, and the best thing you can do when you're on the stage is just being yourself, but then the bigger version of yourself. And if you're someone who is, like this, if you are a sexual person, then it's good if you can be that on stage. But these days, actually more than cheers, you will get people booing on you, because you are perpetuating the cultural idea that women are only there to be objectified. And it's really hard, because you don't want to encourage that idea, because this is in the past and can we please get away from it. But at the other hand, yeah, you still cannot really be yourself, because you have to play with all these ideas. It's complicated.
Final words.
Final words. Well, Sweden Rock, thank you so much. We've had a great time here. We are looking forward to coming back to the UK. We're just going to have a fantastic time. And for people checking it out, thanks. For people telling their friends about Delain, thank you so much. And we hope to meet you on the road one day.